Bienvenidos a un capítulo más de Diálogos Sensoriales. Hoy tengo el inmenso honor de conversar con una de las figuras más influyentes en la vida sensorial y de consumidor, en el análisis de los datos en particular. Seguramente lo conocen, nos ha llevado a toda la parte de consumidor, la parte de dominancia temporal. En fin, estoy muy emocionado. Démosle la bienvenida al doctor Pascal Schlich, investigador del INRA. Pascal, thank you so much for accepting this interview and share with us your thoughts. Welcome to Diálogos Sensoriales.
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, let's start with the beginning, which is initially, what was your first step into the sensory field or into the statistics? Apply it into the sensory data?
Okay, that's a very old story. Back in '84, I was a student in mathematics and statistics, and I had an internship to do somewhere. I was supposed to go to something very theoretical about crystallography, but one day, Marc Danzard, who was one of our teachers, came to the school and said, there is a possibility of internship at INRA in Dijon, and it is about wine. Okay. And so, because I was already a wine lover, I raised my hand and I said, wow, that could interest me. And I went to Dijon, INRA, I met the boss, I met three very nice young researcher ladies, Sylvie Sanchou, Elisabeth Guichard, and Violette Ducruet, and they explained me what they were doing with gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, and the beginning of sensory analysis at INRA with Sylvie Sanchou. At that time, I did not understand much of what they said, but I found the atmosphere very friendly, and I decided to do my internship in this lab, a 3 months internship. And then they offered me a position of a statistician, because at that time, that was the real beginning of PCA and the idea to correlate a sensory profile to gas chromatography and all this stuff. So I accepted the position, and finally I stayed in this lab, which changed name several times. I stayed there for more than 40 years with some visit to other place that we can speak about. That was the real beginning, Ivan.
Wow. So since then until now, you have worked with, I can guess, more than 100 people around the world. And
I think so.
What is the more fascinating thing of working with people outside your country in this case, or your field, because you started with that statistician?
You know, you learn a lot. You learn a lot about other culture, of course, but also professionally about other way to work. And I remember my first visit was in the UK to Hal McPhee, Gene McEwan in Camden. And so I learned so much there. I was lucky to get some money from the European community to go there. That was back in 87, 88, 89. And at that time, the English were really in advance as compared to France. And then I was introduced to the beginning of preference mapping, which I brought back to France under the name Cartographie des Préférences. And I sent to the UK to Gene McEwan correspondence analysis, which is quite French techniques. And so that was fascinating. Later, I went in the States working with Anne Noble on wine, and I learned so much from these fascinating ladies. Right. And then more recently, I spent several visits in Japan, where also it was very new for me. And I forgot some other country, of course, thanks to organizations like the European Sensory Network, I was lucky to be at the beginning of this organization with Ed Custer, David Lyon, Huguette Nico in France, Sylvie Sanchou, and nowadays the ESN has become a very large, efficient organization. Wow. Also, I was lucky to be at the time of the launch of the Sensometrics Society with Harm Dixterus and many others. And it's also a society which has been very successful, the Sensometrics Society. So I was lucky to start my career at a time where sensometric was not really existing, and so it was really easy for me, because I had a background in mathematics, to contribute to this new field.
At that time, how difficult was to communicate with the people? You just mentioned that it was like...
you know, Ivan, for me, it was the English first.
Okay, yeah.
Because I was very poor in English at that time, and that was my main problem. But over, let's say, 10 to 20 years, I finally end up to be able to speak English with a strong French accent, but still to understand people. And after, besides, no, I don't remember of specific difficulties, because I've already been welcomed by sensory people, because they knew that they need statistics. On my side, I knew the statistics, and I had to understand their problem. And this was a very interesting part of my career of statistician. You know, right. For me, statistics is not mathematics. If you don't apply statistics, you don't do statistics. If you don't want to apply, let's do probability or something else. But statistics becomes interesting when you solve problem. And to solve problem, not only you need to know the stats, the fundamental of stats, but you need to understand the question. And to understand the question, you need to understand how the data were collected. What is the principle of gas chromatography, sensory analysis, the subjectivity of human being assessments, psychophysics, and all these things. So you need to learn during all your career as an applied statistician.
Right, and you speak the yes, let's say universal language, which is mathematics. So it's interesting. Nice. Now about the way of thinking of the people at the beginning, where they were more like open-minded about all the statistical procedures and etc. And nowadays, is there any difference of the way of thinking of the people, or it's the same as we are open to receive those principles or those fundamentals of the mathematics?
I think yes. I think people are still open, but know that they have most of them masterized the basics of many things like multivariate analysis. Now there is the big things of artificial intelligence. And so when we see the last Pangborn, it's obvious that people are really open to that and try to enter into that. However, maybe they hope too much about that because as they do not really know the background of this method, which requires a lot of data, and in many cases, in sensory, we don't have a lot, because doing sensory experiments, sensory tasting, at the best with consumer, you have 300 people, and that's not big data. And so maybe the hope is too high, but people are still open to that. And the sensory people, during all my career, I found them very open-minded to the tool that can help them.
Right. So that's a good news, I guess. But speaking about the artificial intelligence, do you think we are close to have a really nice this modeling of this huge good product acceptable by everybody, or we are not even in the middle of that way?
I think we are just in the beginning, and I'm not sure that it will suddenly solve this difficult problem of designing the best product for the most people or for specific people. And also, I want to say that I'm not really in this field myself, because, as you know, I just get retirement. I'm still, how do you say, emeritus researcher for 2 years or 4, but contrarily to some of my other colleagues, I have not investigating much this field. I've seen a lot of progress for dealing with free language, you know, and that's helpful. I had a PhD student, Benjamin Mayer, who did all his research on free commons, and it's very helpful for that. But still, we need a lot of commons.
Right.
And it's not always possible in our field.
Right.
As opposed to other field.
And well, you also mentioned about the way of collecting data, the objective of the study, and etc. For you, if it was your case, when you receive or used to receive that just data without the hypothesis or the significance and etc. At the beginning, I guess it was more like, help me to analyze this. So based on that, how difficult is to deal with a result file without knowing the objective, for instance?
You must know the objective. You must know. I mean, I've done some consulting, you know, in other field for my INRA colleague, and in every cases, I ask them to explain me their topic, their field, their objective, their assumptions, in order to conduct the right statistics. And I don't believe that machines could know that with no information, just by receiving a table of data with line and columns. The machine would need to know something about the nature of the column, of the lines, and I would say also of the objectives.
Right. Yeah, it's important to know it, though. Okay. Well, I normally I know the objective, but some people say that just pass me the result file and I will analyze it. So that's why. Okay, let's go back a little with Sensometrics, the society. What are let's say the big change of the society, or why the society is still a state-of-the-art society for the rest of the world?
Yeah, the Sensometrics Society, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, at the very beginning, we were about 10 people, and all of us were statisticians or very heavy users of statistics. And now the Sensometrics meeting gathers more than 100 people, I would say 150. And in the room, there are also people from the food industries, and they come to learn something. Sometimes they don't understand everything because some statisticians deliver very theoretical talks. But that was a change. When we came from 10 to 20 to I would say 50 to 100, all of these people are not with a background in statistics. A lot of them are with a background in sensory, but they joined the society in order to learn things that could be helpful for them, and then they bring their question in our society. And then I believe the society made huge progress thanks to the participation of these non-statistically backgrounded people.
Right. And that evolution of the people or the amount of people about the fields of them, it's more like technicians. Then they are more like maybe mathematics or physicists, or what's the main area of the people who do sensometric?
I think though it's mainly sensory people, but at different level, because in some organization the analysis is led to technician, in some other not, and in the first case, then the technician also has to learn to make better use of statistics. So I knew people who are technician who come. I knew people who are more engineer, project manager, who also come in order to bring to their field some new idea. Do we have people from outside sensory? A few of them, because the invited speaker, most often we try to pick them outside sensory. Like, let's say, in psychometrics or sociometrics or things like that, because these people could present techniques that they use in their field and we haven't still start to use in our own fields. So thanks to the invited speaker, yes, we have people from outside the sensory fields, and sometimes there are people who are just curious to know. Even we had sometimes some top manager who came in order to see what's happened in this society. Could I send some of my people? But the field is normally restricted to the stats for the sensory data. But as soon as you link this sensory data to other data, it's in the topic of sensometrics.
Right.
So we can have people from chemometrics also that came.
Interesting. And based on that, how difficult is to or was during your career? I mean, it's because I remember my first sensometric a workshop. This is the tomato workshop with the data. You shared that data, and many of us tried to analyze it. And during the presentation, there was like several ways of thinking. And well, how you deal with that when you know that some procedure is not the best one, but it's according to your way of thinking compared with the other person?
Yeah. Well, so first, it's legitimate to have to tackle the same problem with different statistical methods, because we have produced we statisticians a lot of methods, and some of them are more or less the same with another thing of the math, you know. So it's possible to use different things. The point is, if we conclude different results, then we got a problem, and we have to understand why.
Right.
But if different method lead to the same conclusion, it's fine, and it's also a good thing because you can be reassured in this conclusion. So it was always interesting, this situation that you mentioned, where people use different stats. So of course, if you have developed a method, you think that your method is the best for analyzing the data. It's like, you know, when you have a hammer and then everything looks like a nail,
right?
Okay, and so this idea of analyzing the same data set, we did that several times, as you remember, and I think that was a very nice way of discussing between us.
Yes, and at the end, I remember Peter Ponter saying that showing a piece of paper And he said like, okay, everybody says their own opinion, but there's nothing more than like this mean table of the samples, of the degree of liking of the samples. It was really, really interesting, honestly. I remember that, and because of that, I now more involved into the statistics, let's say. You know, it was really, really scary for me at the beginning because, as you mentioned, it was like, I don't know what they are talking about. Preference mapping, PLS, and etc. It was my first time. So after that, well, it was like a good motivator for me. So having those exercises is a good way to spread the word of statistics.
Yeah, Peter Punter, late Peter Punter, was really a great person for that. He collected so many data in his company and he shared this data with us.
Yes. Yeah, I enjoyed really, really, really love that. Okay. I know you have many research or researchers, sorry, but if you think in the top 5, which will be those or one of them?
I mean, you know, of course, it's TDS.
Okay.
And it's not a statistical techniques. It's a data collection techniques.
Yes.
But then after we propose several ways to analyze that. But I mean, why do I put it in first? Because it was successful. I don't know, many hundreds of paper, most software proposed it, many companies use it. So when you reach that point, it means that your idea was good, right? And also the second reason is that the idea came from more or less 2 of my mentors. When I was with Anne Noble in Davis, 98, we were doing a lot of TI on several attributes on wine. Mm-hmm. And then at that time, I realized that it's not a good way to use TI with several attributes because the curves already have the same shape, but it's only the high max that change when you change attributes. Because people receive a certain information and associate to the attribute you ask them. And then I entered the CISG, Centre Européen des Sciences du Goût, right after Eb Custer, who started a research which was very innovative, that was not called TDS at that time. And I simplified his idea to arrive to TDS. And because, you know, Anne Noble, Eb Custer, for me, were really 2 very important persons. So TDS, I put it in first. Then after, I put it in second. For me, was the preference mapping, cartographie des préférences in France, because thanks to that, my group had many contracts with food industries in France, and I was able to hire people. And when I started in 2000, I had only 2 people, not on a fixed position. And 15 years after, we were 20 people fixed position in the team. In fact, the project with the food industry were really important for an applied group like mine. And besides, we did some other research, more academic, but that one were important. Yes.
Nice.
And then now one field on which, of course, I did many things in for panelist performances using statistics like MANOVA, CVS, things like that, and produce some R package with Caroline Pelletier that are useful. So that was also something which occupied me a lot. But then when I think to the question raised in academic project, national project with INRA and other organizations in France, the one for me which was the most important was about sensory education. We did not publish much. I think we have 2 papers about that. But I think that sensory education of children first, but not only children, is the way to have people eating better. And I don't really believe in all these new fancy products where you try to reduce sugar and things like that in product that must have sugar, like a chocolate cake, or hiding vegetable protein in something that seems like a steak. I think a lot of people are working on that, but I don't think it's the best way to have people having a better diet. Right. I think the problem is education and start with children. And we did something in Dijon with Christine Lange, initiated by Ed Custer also at that time. And that was very interesting, very, very interesting for me, even though we did not have a lot of publication about that.
Interesting, but it's interesting that way of thinking about the education of children. And on the other side, which was the most challenging project you had in your career, if there is?
The most challenging. Maybe it's a recent project, and from this project, the data are not yet published. So let's say it's the most challenging, no? Because during these 4 years of emeritus, I must publish that with Michel Vizali. So the project was, there were 2 names of a French project which are not known at the moment. The name was DataSense and another one, Sensas. And this project were supposed to ask people to evaluate their liking and their perception for the food they buy themselves directly every day. And we restricted the project to 3 types of product: pizza, soft bread, and the third one was cookies. And so people were asked to buy what they want in these 3 categories, connect in an app that we developed. The app was named Croque-Noteur, and developed by Michel Vizali. And people scored their preference, but also their perception, especially for fat and sweet, and salt also for soft bread and pizza. And we ask other questions to the people, and this experiment lasts for 1 year or more. And we collected many data, but then we realized that the market is too large. There is several hundreds of pizza on the French market, which I would never guess that, because I don't buy this type of product. I make myself or my wife the pizza.
Okay.
Well, so for each product, we did not have enough data, even though we collected data from more than 1,000 of consumers. And then we did a second phase of the project in which we selected a subset of product in each of these categories in order to span the nutritional space of the product, taking the more fat, the less fat, and so on. Okay? And now, in the second phase, we had much more evaluation by product, more than 70 by product, if I remember correctly. So now this data makes sense. The idea is to understand if the nutritional quality is opposed or goes with the sensory quality. Is there a relation between them or not? Why? Because if we explain that to the food industry, then they can try to direct their product in the direction of a better sensory, but also a better nutritional quality. So this project ended 2 years ago. We did also, in the framework of this project, some lab experiment in order to compare the lab evaluation and the home evaluation. We did also some experimental economy linked to the same type of product in order to put the price into the choice. So we have a plan of 5 to 7 publications to write. Wow. Right. I don't know if we will manage to do all of them, but so let's say it's the more challenging because it's not finished.
Okay.
and we had a lot of problem with this data collection at home, you know, to check that people do it honestly, okay, because they could connect and not taste and enter data. So we had to do a lot of things. And today it's important because after COVID, a lot of people went into home tasting. And so, yes, that is the last, but the most challenging.
Nice. It's a huge research. Hopefully you can publish that. If not,
I hope so.
I'm pretty sure there are many people who can follow your research. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, let's move to this preference question part. I will ask two options for you, and you need to select one of them. So let's start with I guess the really simple one. Red wine or white wine?
Red wine.
Tetra testing or triangle test?
Tetra testing.
Traditional descriptive analysis or rapid methods?
Difficult to answer that one because it's not for the same objective. Can I say both?
No, but you can say
no.
No, you can say both. Well, both is fine. Don't worry, it's fine. Both is fine. Mountain or forest?
Mountain.
ANOVA or MANOVA?
MANOVA.
Analytical or consumer testing?
Consumer testing.
Aperol spritz or beer?
Beer.
Parametric or non-parametric statistics?
Parametric.
And this is the difficult one. Preference mapping or PLS?
Mapping.
Okay. Thank you for your answers.
Because it's data collection, and PLS is just data analysis.
Right.
And with no data, no analysis.
Totally agree.
So this is why I answer preference mapping.
Yeah, I'm on that way. I'm totally agree with you. Thank you. Okay, let's move to the final part of the interview. I have some questions that I have been collecting with some colleagues because I share with them that I will speak with you, and some of them asked me to say well, of course, to ask you, what's your opinion about this true or lies statistics? I forgot the name, the spreadsheets, for instance, that it has take this like a rule of God and be always like this, like that, or don't do this and that. Those are applicable to the sensory testing, or
I'm not sure I understand what you said.
Okay, let me rephrase. What is your opinion about those documents that are on the internet or TikTokers that says true or lies of statistics? For instance, that you always need to do this, and that, or don't do like you always have your hypothesis at 95%. Or something like that. I mean, is there any rules of statistics, or is not correct that in that sense? Does that make sense?
I think I think I get the question now. I think we should not be too strict because, you know, I know the hypotheses under ANOVA are never met with sensory data. However, ANOVA is robust, and so wanting to check everything. It's not, I mean, normality of the residual, it's not necessary. Symmetry of the distribution is more important. And so we don't need to be too strict. Also, a p-value of point of 5.5%, for me the same than 4.5. Mm-hmm. So when I have 5.5, instead of saying not significant, I much prefer saying close to be significant, so you should maybe think about it. And so I don't like the strict rules of saying with this kind of data you must do that. And for instance, if you perform ANOVA with 0-1 data, mm-hmm. It works.
Right.
It works. And of course, there is better technique for dealing with these data, but it works. So now, generally, I don't like that, because then it will limit creativity.
Right. So, like you mentioned at the beginning, you must be like open-minded in this case.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Which are the in your opinion, of course, which are the basic statistics or the tools that a sensory analyst should have in their day-to-day working?
So ANOVA, of course. ANOVA, some non-parametric tests that you must know when you do ranking, for instance, or things like that. Mm-hmm. And of course, some multivariate analysis, because when you do profile, you want to analyze that multivariately. So of course, understand PCA, right? And because from PCA, you can easily understand other techniques like CA, CVA, and so on. But the understanding of what is a PCA is of paramount importance. So then after, when it comes to MANOVA and all these things, it's a variation of PCA in which you put some factors into the model. So if I would have to say three things, it would be ANOVA, PCA, and some non-parametric tests like Friedman and some others, mostly to deal with the ranking. And also I forgot to say some notion about binomial testing, of course, because when you do difference testing, you analyze that with the binomial distribution. So people, and also to understand the principle of alpha beta risk. Mm-hmm. That's of paramount importance, the power. And it's really, because it's not a simple thing to understand. As a mathematician, in the beginning, I had trouble with that. And it's really important to understand what is the risk 1, risk 2. So that's it.
Okay. And what advice will you give to the young researchers who are interested in starting a career as a sensometrician?
I think they should read first a good book on sensory first, before statistics. In this book, they will find, of course, some statistics. And then after, there are books on sensometrics, but no, I have to admit that I don't read all of them. So maybe I would say something wrong, but I'm not sure there is one which covers everything in sensometrics. So maybe the best is to try to read the FQP paper. Mm-hmm. As soon as the keywords include sensometrics or PCA, ANOVA, or things like that. Some of them will be difficult for people, but not all of them. And for the textbook, for me, but that's my own preference, and maybe I'm based because I worked also with Hildegard Eman, but the Hildegard Eman and Harry Lawless, for me, is the best. So, but that's just my personal opinion.
Right. No, it's fine. It's important to have those references. Okay, Pascal, let's say we have a time machine, and there are two ways of using that time machine: going to the past, and you can visit your young Pascal and say something to him, or you can go to the future to see the let's say elder Pascal. Which one do you prefer and why?
I think I would say the past, because in that case I would be able to give to Pascal some useful advice to do better as compared that he has done. Whether if I go in the future, I'm not sure I'm able to give useful advice to the new sensometricians, you know. Okay. So, of course, going in the future would be most fascinating for me to see what's happened in 20 years, for instance, or 30 years when I will be no longer in this world. And that would be more interesting for me. But I think I can be more useful if I go in the past and I advise Pascal.
Okay. Is there anything you want to learn that you haven't learned before?
Oh, yes. Recently, I went from SAS to R. Well, I'm still using SAS, but now I'm getting better and better in R. So thinking of transferring some of my SAS tool in R and making them available. So I'm still in the way of progressing in R. And of course, I would like to know more about these language model and all these things. And so if I follow what Michel Visali and Benjamin Mailleux are doing now, I think for me that would be a good opportunity to learn more about that. Whether I will do it is not so sure, because retirement is really nice, and I can do a lot of things that I couldn't do before outside the statistics and theory.
Okay. Thank you, Pascal. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable time into this chatting. I'm really convinced that this conversation will be inspiring for other people, and thank you for having me at this time. Do you have anything else to add into this conversation?
No, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to have this interesting discussion, and also apologize for the delay in which I replied to your first invitation. I think it was 1 or 2 years ago.
Yeah, like 2 years ago, but no problem.
And also I want to tell you my best wishes for the next Pangborn, which I'm sure will be a success in your country.
Yes, and we hope to see you here. You need to be there.
I want to go.
Perfect. See you there. We can share some Mexican red wine, of course, and with a cochinita pibil, which is a typical dish of Mérida. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you next time. Y ustedes, muchas gracias por vernos. Si les gustó, denle click y like, y compartan. Si no, simplemente no digan nada. Nos vemos en la siguiente ocasión. Chao. Thank you, Pascal.